Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Flower Power Live. Today is March 7th, and we are just 2 weeks away from the spring equinox. Now, where I live, there is still nothing much green showing outside. So, what I decided to do is a little bit different show tonight. Is that I decided, well, you know what? I'm just going to go to my Herbcrafters Tarot card deck and just, ask for a good card to share with everyone tonight. And the card that I chose is called Pachamama. And Pachamama is the saying for Mother Earth and is part of the Incan tradition. And since I have been feeling the pain, as probably a lot of you have been, of the things that are happening here on the surface of Mother Earth, this seemed appropriate to dive in a little bit more to about Earth and how we are all interconnected in this system. And so I want to share this. Plus, I've got a bonus card for you at the end. Now, my name's Allison from the Well Cultivated Life, and usually I say I'm an herbalist, an educator, and an ecologist, and I love sharing this with you. But tonight, what we're going to be doing is diving a little bit more into the ecological part, the ecological perspective. Oops, I think I just left the studio. So I'll start back here. Um, so Pachamama. Pachamama is the uh, ancient, in the ancient Incan tradition. Her name means Mother Earth, as I said. She's also called Mama Pacha, and she is the protector of nature, which includes the food crops, and she's also the goddess of fertility. So, similar to Gaia from the Greek tradition, she represents nourishment and abundance, and she is called upon during different types of rituals throughout the growing season. She is often represented as a mountain, and I found some wonderful pictures of her representation. This statue here is more of an ancient representation of her, and she's often shown as being pregnant. Um, and I believe those two heads on the side are babies that she's holding. And but she's also a lot of times shown as a mountain, and there were so many incredible images of this that I really wanted to share a whole bunch of them with you. And a lot of these artists, unfortunately, don't sign their work. And so I cannot give them proper credit. But this one with the roses in her hair is by Jazzy Watson. That if you like this style of art, you've got to check her out. I will try to remember to put a link down below this video so you can see her other work. So here's another image. She's holding the corn and all of the foods. This one, she's just grabbed onto the all of the life and all of the abundance of life. And this one here is I love because as a mountain, it shows her whole body and the water flowing out of it and how she's just integrated with the whole earth itself. And here the other one with these beautiful rainbows and um, finally this lovely sculpture that's just Pachamama growing out of the earth as just completely integrated in with the entire land itself. Now, one of the things that the Indian traditions that was so important about Pachamama was returning, regifting the abundance that they received from the land. So whatever crops that they grew, they would always have a celebration and they would be making offerings back to her. And this is just such a beautiful gesture because it really shows this whole cycle of life, which is very much in line with ecological principles, this cycling of energy and matter throughout our systems. We can break it down into a more sciencey view of it. And it's not that surprising that this developed um, as the ecological principles because we have learned this from observing nature. And obviously, so many more of these ancient traditions already look at the earth in this way. And then, over the last several hundred years, we've taken some of these and we've sort of put them in a different language. But I hope you can see how they're really not that different from each other. Because in this way, the name Pachamama, it really goes way beyond the goddess, and it really talks about the earth as an entire ecosystem, the whole earth. And so this view of the earth that's constantly flowing and moving, we think a lot of times that there's living beings, sentient beings, and we think of animals, and then plants, of course, we know they're alive, but we tend to not necessarily think they're as connected or as aware as animals are. But the truth is that everything is connected and they're constantly changing. So even a rock, which we think of as dead, is actually constantly changing. It's just changing on a scale that we cannot comprehend at humans. It's changing on a scale that is an energy that is so much slower than how we live our lives, especially in this day and age. So even a mountain is constantly changing. The wind blows and the piece of rock gets worn away by wind and weather and eroded, and a mountain itself is constantly changing. And so everything from the whole planet down to like a habitat, to a leaf on the floor of the forest, down to a small little microcosm, are all ecosystems. They all are cycling. They're all cycles of life at all of these different scales. And so this we tend as humans to kind of separate ourselves out from it, but actually we are really a part of it. It's something that we've kind of been separated from for about the past, I'd say, 500 years. These earth connections, the daily kind of fluxes and flows of what happens in nature. And we sit inside the window and we look out and go, oh, isn't that pretty? But we don't smell the soil. We don't walk barefoot on the earth. We don't feel the breeze blowing on our skin when we've separated ourselves by being inside so much. And so this is part of the reason why I am just so passionate about sharing all the wondrousness of plants with you every week, because I feel like it really is an incredible key to reconnect us to the cycles, the natural cycles of the earth. And there's plenty of studies that show that by being in nature, it can calm us down better than probably anything you can imagine. So tonight we're kind of asking, well, how do you look at the earth? Like, how do you um, perceive the things around you? And recently I saw this video by this super awesome yogi from India, Sadhguru, and he does a lot of he's really out in the world and he's talking a lot about these sorts of important things. And he was at a farm and talking about how we look at farmers in particular would look at a plant and say, well, that's a weed and that's bad, and this is a plant that I want to grow, so that's good. And he said you need to really reframe the way you're looking at plants, because sometimes, that every plant has the ability to bring something good back into the ecosystem. And so what I wanted to share with you tonight was just a couple of plants that are so important. So when we have plants with deep roots or wide fibrous roots, these plants are super important and they're beneficial because they can hold the soil and keep erosion from happening. The Here, I'm going to leave you a quiz at the end. What I want you to tell me which plant was in every single one of these pictures. So this just is showing some of my favorite roots that I've dug up. This is some grass and how the roots are spreading out and they're holding the soil in place. There's also plants that many would consider a weed with these big, wide leaves or nutrient-filled leaves, such as nettles and dandelion and comfrey, that those can be cut and they can be returned to the surface of the land as a compost. And so, even though they're considered weeds, they still have some benefit. And there's also a lot of weeds that have flowers. This on the bottom, the purple one, that is a thistle, which a lot of people think is a horrid invasive plant, but that attracts pollinators. And another thing that some of these kind of weedy species can do is that can they can attract insects that you don't want on your plants. They can attract those away from the garden. I use evening primrose to help attract Japanese beetles away from my garden. So by kind of reconsider the way that you're looking at the plants in your neighborhood or your yard or the park or wherever you go, and get a little bit of a fresh perspective on these invaders. Remember that they are all part of this ecological system. And even though we don't want to grow them for our own harvest, of course, if you've known me at all for a while, you know that I love most of the weeds that grow in my garden. You can take a larger ecological view of your garden system and realize that these can each serve a purpose. Now, taking a stand for the plants, for the earth, and so on, it's pretty much my most important issue. And when I see things happening either to other people or on earth, I find it to be incredibly painful. And so one of the things I thought, well, what can we do? Like, how do we work with this kind of pain? And so of course I decided to go to one of my favorite sources, flower essences. And I went into the FES flower essence repertory, which is kind of like the big book of flower essences. They're one of the main groups that's done a lot of research on flower essences. And they have a section called Earth Healing and Nature Awareness. So I was like, what would be a good plant that would sort of help us with this part? And so the plant that, of course, caught my attention is called Mountain Pride, and it is a type of penstamon that grows in this particular species they use for the flower essence, grows in like the Sierras and up into the Pacific Northwest. And the botanical name of it is Penstamon newberryi. And the flower essence for this helps you to take a warrior-like courage, gives you the warrior-like courage to take a stand for the earth and for values that are greater than your own personal interests. So it says the ability to act on what one knows to be true is of enormous importance, especially in our modern world. It is of utmost urgency that the individual learn to transform feelings of dissatisfaction or disillusionment with the world into positive energy for change. And so this applies, like I said, to so many situations, especially the war happening, that people just couldn't even believe this was happening. We can't even comprehend it. And so Mountain Pride helps you to shift your perspective and transform this like anger or fear or whatever you might be feeling at this time into taking an action for a positive change. And this is super important because the people who can't do that, they need this remedy. They confuse peace with being passive, and that's actually not true. It says here that positive activity is an important healing agent, not only for your personal self, but also for having real peace in the world. So, what can we do? What kind of positive action could we take? And so, this is exactly what our card is going to help us with tonight. So, the Pachamama card from Earthcrafters Tarot is the world, and the world is the last card in the major arcana. So if you've worked with tarot at all, the major arcana represents the hero's journey, And in this case, they're talking about the hero's journey, the journey of becoming an herbalist. And so Dandelion is the fool. That's the hero on the very beginning of the journey where they're lighthearted, ready to go, but they don't have any knowledge. And so by the time you get to the world, the hero has traveled all the way back around and is now returning to the same place, but with worldly knowledge, with the wider perspective of how everything fits together. And so what they say about this card is weave a rainbow that makes makes the world whole. Weave a rainbow that makes the world whole. Share your sacred work. Love wins. Now, that pretty much answers our question of what could I do? What positive activity could I do? So, show's over. Just kidding. Let's get into the card just a little bit more. But, this is a great message for what we could do right now. Now, the picture shows the harvest of all the different colors of the flower. And it starts with poppies on the outside and dandelion, and it goes into larkspur and borage, and into the center is the yarrow. And then there's some other really important beginner herbs around the circle and the four cardinal directions. And this butterfly, the monarch butterfly that is on the wheel, is representing the cycle of life, how everything comes back around and how the butterfly has now returned from migration and has completed the journey. So Pachamama is the sovereign deity of Incan mythology, and she represents everything that is whole, beloved, and complete. And like you, she can create life from either joy or pain. And so this interconnectedness is really important because are you creating from joy? And if you are, everything connected to your joy will feel joy. And are you creating from pain? And if you are, everything connected to your pain will feel that pain. So what I did was, because this was all about the earth, I decided, you know what? I am going to do another card. And I really wanted to do a card from the um, Earthcrafters Tarot. And let me find that. And they're not the Earthcrafters Tarot, the Earthcraft Oracle deck, because it's a new deck and I love it and I love the artwork on it. And so I went in and intuitively chose a card, and I could not believe of course I could believe the perfect match for this particular show, The Mountain. And this beautiful artwork, again, the woman is named Danielle Boodoo-Fortune, and this could not be a better representation of Pachamama on this card, represented as the mountain. And the words from the card say there's so much reward in seeing things from a bird's eye view. Looking down, you notice patterns and connections you couldn't have imagined before. So, imagine you're standing on top of the tallest mountain. You've just hiked up there. You've spent a lot of time packing your pack and getting ready and making your journey up to the top. And when you get there, you have a great achievement, but you also realize, wow, there is so much more out here in the world that I didn't even realize was part of me. And the whole world is connected. It is continuous. No part of the mountain is not connected to another part of the land. Everything continues on top of the whole earth. And so without this view, you cannot really see what you're missing, or you can't really see how we're all interdependent. And so the question is for you this week, is there a place where you are not looking at this wider view, where you are sort of just looking at the details and not allowing yourself to see how everything that you do is affecting other people, how everything other people doing are affecting you? And so just recognizing that even though you do stand alone, you have your achievements, your accomplishments, you are a mountain, you are also part of the entire world and connected to the entire Earth ecosystem. So that was a long show. Thank you for sticking with me through the whole thing. And I look forward to next week's show. If you're watching me on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and like. It really does help people to notice, and more people can be able to watch the show and hopefully get inspired by flower power. So I'll see you all next Monday. Thanks so much. Bye bye.